10th, 2020. We had the minutes of the regular meeting of October 21, 2020 provided to us in the read ahead. So we're looking for a motion to approve or to make corrections as needed.
I move we approve the minutes for the regular meeting of October 21st, 2020 as submitted.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of October 21, 2020 as submitted. Questions on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No opposition, so the minutes are approved. Public portion, have you heard anything from anybody, Tim?
No, sir. As usual, we've invited public comments by 4 o'clock today and none have been received.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to new business, cost of living allowance.
Very good. And I think I see Mr. Witt connecting now.
Good.
Yes, I think created new software, and I think that caused the problem.
Okay.
Okay.
I only see a phone. I don't see Tom.
Right. I had suggested
All right,
that he
so
call in if he was having trouble making a full connection, that he should just call in.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Okay.
Cost of living allowance?
Remember when we discussed the budget in June, the new budget for fiscal year 2020, 2021, the board did not provide at that time the customary annual cost of living increase. And we promised to the employees at that time, and the employees were good with that. In fact, they had anticipated the problems, the budgetary problems related to COVID, and they had even suggested that it would be appropriate to not make any adjustments when the fiscal year began. But we did promise the employees at that time that if circumstances change, particularly if they improved, we would reconsider. And I believe we are at that point now. We did suffer a significant one-time loss of revenues as demands were suppressed in March through June. But since June, demands and revenues have been largely normal. They're currently running about only 1.3% below normal for the last month or so. That's pleasing to me because I think WVU's on-site attendance is affected more than that. So WVU's using a blended approach to their curriculum right now with some virtual classes and some on-site. So I think the 1.3% suppression under normal is actually very good compared to the potential that we saw in March through June. In addition, we've been reimbursed over $260,000 from the CARES program for COVID-related expenses. The net cost of such a raise, I'm recommending a 3% COLA raise, and if you agree with that, the net cost of that raise is $136,000 for the remainder of the budget year, which is well below the $261,000 in reimbursements that we have received. And the last piece of information that I'll throw out is that the City Council approved last week a 2.5% COLA for their staff. And we've always tried to keep pace, if not to exceed what the city has done. So with all that in mind, my recommendation to the board is that you approve a 3% COLA for all employees effective January 1st of 2021, applying to those employees who were on the payroll on July 1 of 2020 and would have received the customary raise at that time if it had been provided.
Tim, how do you see this moving forward then for the next budget?
Honestly, I hope that the board is able to approach city council with the now year-long delayed inflationary rate increase. So making that assumption, I see no problems in looking forward to this. Now, if that rate increase is delayed further, then this would potentially add to the deficits that we've been running in recent years, at least budgetary deficits. Again, recall we had a long discussion in June about budgeted expenses versus actual expenses. And recalling that in preparation for this discussion, I sent you a financial report today. And I'm sorry you've perhaps not had enough time to look at it, but we always try to tailor our expenses to our revenues. And so if we were not to get that planned rate increase, then we could offset that to some degree by managing expenditures as well. But I think everyone at City Council is expecting our proposal for a rate increase. They all have understood for over a year that we've been in the mode of needing an inflation-based increase, and that we've simply postponed it because of most recently the COVID circumstances. So no one's going to be surprised when we go to council for that inflation-based increase, and it is still planned for that to be effective July 1 of 2021.
Okay.
So this would cover the remainder of half their year, and then again in July, it would be cut. We would be raising it another 3% then to keep on track of what we've done in the past.
That would be my recommendation. Yes.
Okay,
And
just wanted to make sure I understood the timeline. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to say again, what you just said in your question is that this raise would become effective January 1 of this coming year, and has no look back provision other than looking at which employees are eligible or not. But it does not give a retroactive raise to anyone. The raise has been suspended, and there was no raise from July 1 until, under this proposal, the coming January 1st. And so it would be a 3% raise, but applying for only the remaining 6 months of the current fiscal year. And then, yes, I would hope circumstances in July would allow and merit consideration of the customary annual increase at that time.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, or we're looking for a second? Motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Oh,
I think
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Did you need me to do the whole, I'm sorry. I have too many board meetings today. Do you need me to do the whole motion?
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Please. Yeah.
Let me find it.
I can do it, Karen, if you want. I have it up here.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Well, I said that and then scrolled down. I move to approve an across-the-board pay increase for 3% effective January 1st, 2021, and applying to all employees who are on the payroll on July 1st, 2020, but not applying to employees hired since that date.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve an across-the-board pay increase of 3% effective January 1, 2021. Questions on that motion? No questions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Okay, move on to the industrial park IJDC loan.
Yes, sir. This is an interesting topic. There is a major food processing facility known as Mountaintop Beverage that's been proposed to build at the Morgantown Industrial Park. And if you'll forgive me for the rest of this conversation, I'll probably just say MIP for Morgantown Industrial Park. If I I'm not privy to the exact data, but what I understand is that this is probably somewhere in the range of $100 million private investment that's been proposed, with potential employment of 60 to 100 full-time jobs. It's also the anchor that has been discussed lately regarding the new interchange on I-79 at the Harmony Grove Bridge, where River Road crosses I-79 just north of the Uffington Bridge. This proposed mountaintop beverage facility is going to consume a large amount of water and sewer service, about 500 gallons a minute on a continuous round-the-clock basis. And for that reason, it's going to require substantial improvements in our system between the water treatment plant and the proposed facility across the river at MIP, so that we can deliver those needed services. And those improvements are estimated right now to cost about $4.1 million for the water and $3.9 million for the sewer. Now, typically, and in this case, those costs are the responsibility of the applicant. In other words, Mountaintop Beverage or someone on their behalf would bear the cost of those roughly $8 million worth of water and sewer improvements. But that high initial capital cost threatens the viability of the project. Mountaintop Beverage has informed the owners, operators at MIP that their project cannot sustain that high initial capital cost. And so the owners of MIP have proposed to MUB that we use an IJDC loan. Recall the IJDC is the Infrastructure Jobs Development Council. They're a state agency, a West Virginia state agency. They are the gateway agency that manages all the disbursement of any and all state funds to utility projects, economic development projects, and the like. So the MIP folks have proposed that we pursue an IJDC loan to fund this $8 million worth of work, and then recover the long-term debt service from the new customers that the project will serve via a debt service surcharge. And under that arrangement, then MUB technically takes out a loan, MUB and the city, because it would require the issuance of bonds. And of course, that would require the participation and support of city council. Assuming all of that, MUB and the city effectively serve just as a conduit for the loan, but the debt service surcharge provides the mechanism that effectively, and as a very real practical matter, requires that the customers who are served by the project pay the debt service on the loan that makes the project possible. Now that all ought to sound very familiar because we've done this already in, I think, 4 different cases. We've done it at Rockley Road for a water project, Whispering Woods, or also known as Quarry Run Road, for a water project. We've done it for Sunshine Estates for a sewer project, and we did a major storm upgrade in the Forest Drive area out in the Morgan Street corner of Suncrest. That was a storm project. So we've done 4 of these projects. The difference here is that this Mountaintop Beverage project at MIP would be the first commercial industrial application of the approach. And because of that, it brings with it a much higher risk of default on that promised debt service payment being made by the customers. So let's just use Rockley Road as the example, because it's the most recent one that we did. I think we had a minimum number of 20 customers required for that project. So we took the annual debt service. I don't remember that number. I'll just make it up at $100,000 a year. And we divided that annual debt service over the number of customers, 20 in this case. And so each of those customers signed a contract with us agreeing that they would pay, again, in this example, I'm making up the numbers, that they would pay $5,000 a year in annual debt service to us via a surcharge added to their regular monthly bill. And so the way we actually accomplish that debt service surcharge is we take a rate ordinance to city council and we add that debt service surcharge component to that applicable service area via a rate ordinance. So the unique factor here at the MIP project is that as this project begins, we will probably only have one customer that qualifies to pay that debt service surcharge, and that would be Mountaintop Beverage. And we all hope that that business will succeed and stay, but everyone has to realize the possibility that it might not. And none of us know if it's going to succeed and stay. And the long-term debt will require for them to succeed and stay for 30 years in order for that debt to be repaid. And so I've insisted, as my own anticipation of the necessary requirement of this, that a backstop has to be provided. That unlike all the other projects that we've done with this debt service surcharge arrangement, that this particular project, because of its commercial industrial nature and the much higher chance of its failure, that someone has to provide a backstop and guarantee that debt service will be paid, and guarantee that in some irrevocable way. We can't just depend on the promise. I mean, Mountaintop Beverage would probably sign an agreement promising to pay that debt service for 30 years. But if they go bankrupt and disappear, then that promise is unenforceable. And so we need an irrevocable, absolutely guaranteed backstop. The disappointing part about this so far is that I've already discussed this with the state funding agencies and the development agencies, and also at the county level as well. And no one's ever had to solve this problem before. So right now, we have not identified the party or the actual mechanism that would be done to provide this guaranteed backstop. Having said all of that, I'm very confident that an acceptable backstop can and will be found. We just need to be creative and find the answer to that problem. But I'm confident that can be done. With all of that said, I think the project has great and exciting potential, and I think it deserves an out-of-the-box response by MUB in which we pursue the funding approach that I've described in these remarks. I think we can manage the unique financial risk, making the assumption that irrevocable backstop can be found and implemented. And if we succeed in doing that, then we can then play a critical role in helping to successfully pursue this opportunity for our county. Not because it's our function to do that, but because it's our mission to not be an obstacle. MUB was created 33 years ago to remove obstacles to our community's growth. And I see this in much the same fashion. This problem of the high cost of obtaining utility service to that site is an obstacle to the growth of the county. And I think we can and should solve it.
So you're asking us to approve funding in the assumption that a backstop will be found?
Yes, but I would clarify that statement by saying that your approval would include the condition that the approval applies only if such a backstop is found.
I'd prefer to find the backstop first and then approve it.
The other clarification I'll offer is this is not your first and final approval of this project. What I'm really asking you to do is to approve the funding approach, the concept. None of this is binding at this point, but essentially what I'm doing is I'm covering my butt.
I see.
And the staff's butt, so that you don't get surprised that we're doing this without your being informed and without your having granted approval. There's a lot of work involved in order to get this project to the point that we can actually even go to the city and ask them to issue the bonds and take advantage of the loans. Easily something approaching, in round numbers, probably a year's worth of hard administrative work at the staff level to make this plan happen. And I just simply want to make sure that we're all on board and we're all saying, yes, this is what we want to do before we start that year's worth of hard work. So again, it's in principle only, it's in concept only. It is not the approval tonight of the details that would commit us to the loan.
And by us doing this, it also makes it easier for you to approach a backstop with this commitment.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Correct.
can you explain to me the concept of the backstop? I know we don't have yet the person that'll be or entity that'll be, but what do they get out of it? What do they get so if we collect 1% of the debt from the beverage place, what does the backstop get? What's their incentive? How does that concept work?
Very good question. I've had this discussion already preliminarily with the state funding and development folks. And frankly, I thought that the most obvious backstop would be that the funding folks would agree to make these loans forgivable in the event of a default by the industrial commercial customer. In other words, they would wipe the debt away. That if Mountaintop Beverage went bankrupt, that the loan would become uncollectible at that point, and that the state would agree to not collect from us the remaining balance of the loan. Why would they do that? Because that's their job in the Economic Development Office.
But then the taxpayers eat that.
Pardon me?
But then the taxpayers eat that.
Well, again, they're going to do that anyway for some other applicant and some other project. So I making the assumption that we ought to have a state development office and that it is the mission and function of that office to entice businesses and to assist businesses in investing, making those assumptions. I think we're just, Mon County and this project are simply competing with all the others that are lined up. And so I think Ms. Caton asks the perfect question. What's in it for the party that provides the backstop? I think what's in it for them is that it is their function and duty, and it's their job to encourage and invest, and in some cases to take an investment risk in order to encourage a business to come to our state and our county.
Well, and they get indirectly, but the state gets payroll taxes and sales taxes and all the other property, all the other fees and taxes, licensing things that they get. So they would get some revenue as long as the business is in practice, is open.
Right.
It's just a matter of when it closes. So they do stand to benefit as long as the business stays open.
Absolutely.
Okay, I have another important question that I probably should have came up with first. But so Mountaintop Beverage is a processing. I tried to Google them, and to be fair, I didn't spend as much time as I should have, but I couldn't find the company. Can you explain what they do a little more?
Only a little more, because
Okay.
I don't have a really, I'm sorry, somebody else talking?
Oh, it might have just been me banging my knee into the desk. Sorry.
I don't have a detailed understanding of what they do, but I believe that they are essentially a food packaging operation, and that they depend on other producers. So their client base, again, I'm making up examples, but their client base might be General Mills or some meat processor that sends product to this site to be packaged. But somehow that creates a large amount of industrial strength food waste for them, and some unique sewage treatment requirements. So it's not just taking stuff out of one plastic bag and putting it in another plastic bag. It's more complex than that, because it does produce a very strong industrial waste for us to treat. That's as much as I know at this point.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Simple question.
Yes, sir. You're breaking up, but I think I can hear you.
Okay, that's being produced, are sewage plants, particularly after the expansion, be able to process that, or will it require additional equipment?
If you look at the estimates and the site plans that I've given you, all of the improvements that are required for us to serve them extend from the water treatment plant at Don Knotts Boulevard across the river and into their site. That does not mean that the treatment happens at the water treatment plant. It's just a coincidence that that's where our sewer system is large enough to accommodate their needs. And we will begin at that point, by coincidence, again, at the water treatment plant to extend across the river into MIP. And by the way, we already have a sewer system that does that, that extends across the river and into MIP. It's simply not big enough to handle the volume that this project will require. So that's why we're upgrading our facilities, is that we simply don't have the capacity, the pipe size and the pumping size to serve their proposed needs. With regard to the nature of the treatment that they'll need, we will require them, and these discussions have already been underway, we are requiring them to put in industrial wastewater treatment on their site, privately owned, privately operated, in order to partially treat that sewage and make it more domestic in nature and to reduce its potency, for lack of a better word, so that it is more domestic in nature and treatable in our processes. So we will not need any unique treatment processes within the MUB system, because we are requiring the customer to do that privately on their side before they discharge the sewage to us.
And the other question I had, have you approached any federal agencies, maybe working with Senator Manchin's office, to see about possibilities of funding law?
We mentioned the possibility to the local development director, Russ Rogerson from the Morgantown Area Partnership. We mentioned with him the possibility of an EDA loan or grant. And I believe he's already pursued such possibilities. But we are, we're kind of splitting a hair here. We're not accepting the responsibility to fund this to be the only funding source for this project. And we're simply responding to the request that we provide our water and sewer extensions through an IJDC loan. So I guess that's a very long answer for no, sir. We have not yet explored any other funding opportunities than simply an IJDC loan.
Doesn't I, oh, sorry, Tom.
No other
Tom,
questions?
did you say no other questions? Did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
No other questions.
Is there a certain percent we make off of IJDC loans? Or like, is that interest rate set that they would pay to, wait, let me rephrase this. Is the percent that we would ask the company for, okay, sorry, I'm making it very confusing.
Are we locked
guess-
into a fixed rate?
Huh?
Are we locked into a fixed rate? Is that what you're
That's
saying?
what I'm wondering, if we're locked into a fixed rate for the IJDC, and then what we would ask the beverage company for, what are we looking at to
What are we making off the deal?
gain here? Yeah. Thank you, Karen. my brain.
It's okay. It's okay.
All right, let me split that answer up into a couple of parts.
Okay.
I'm not aware of IJDC having ever made a variable rate loan. They may have. I'm not aware of that if they have. So I'm going to offer you the guess that I think all of IJDC's loans are simple fixed rate loans. Now, sometimes that interest rate is 0.
Great.
It is often below the market. So that's the advantage of IJDC money, is it's subsidized and it is usually sub-market rates. No, now I'm moving over to the other half of your question. Do we mark it up? No, we never have. And in fact, I don't think that the law would support it. And I don't think the IJDC would offer the money to us if they knew that we intended to mark it up. So it's a straight pass through. The IJDC loan is a straight pass through. And
So the benefit on our end then would be obviously just the infrastructure in our community and the gain of more business. And then is it also just adding those systems that others could potentially utilize at the business park as well, or just simply to promote more business in the town?
well, again, it's not our immediate function to promote business, but I always bring up the history lesson that we were created to not be an obstacle, and so I think it is our duty to facilitate. It's our duty to provide the level of service that's requested, and so that's how I will frame this proposal. Is I'm not proposing to do anything other than to provide the service that's being requested by this potential customer.
Do you mark up for administrative costs? Or do you pass through administrative costs? Because if you're going to service this loan for 20 years, it's costing them something.
It's in the budget, I think, as I looked at it.
Yeah,
It's not, it's the management side of putting this together is all in there. I didn't see a management fee per se.
If there's I'm sorry.
all of our costs are added on the front end. And so we would charge for the time. I fill out a timesheet every week, and I can put work order numbers on my timesheet. And if I'm going to Charleston, either by Zoom or by vehicle, to pursue this loan, I'm charging my time to that job number, and we're getting paid for that. Now, we get paid for it when the project goes to construction. We don't get paid for it up front. So no, we don't add any carrying charges to the interest rate. Again, that pass through. But the other really big benefit that I think Sarah touched on is we do get the benefit of a new, large, significant customer who will provide us a steady stream of water and sewer payments. And there has been in recent years, thankfully, a very soft trend, but there is an identifiable trend now for lower water uses. Conservation. WVU has put forth several years ago a huge conservation effort that was successful to the degree that we see the effect of it in our budget. We don't get as much money from WVU as we used to because they don't use as much water and sewer. And so we do welcome a new large user that will help offset some of those financial losses. And so a large sustainable customer with all the revenues that go along with it are very welcome. And the final part of it, I think one of you also mentioned the tangential benefit to the surrounding areas around River Road, the Harmony Grove area, and certainly within the industrial park. This new project is, I think, certain to cause spin-off investments in the industrial park and the surrounding area. And so these investments will make service to those future businesses or homes or whatever they are much less expensive to install initially and cheaper in the long run as well.
Hey, Barbara, can you run the rest of this conversation? Because I'm uncomfortable participating in this particular segment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, further discussion, anybody? We understand what we're considering. At this point, it is basically the concept with the idea of suing it back up for the expenses of backstop and no commitment to actually do this at this point. Any questions? Any further discussion?
Sounds good to me.
I can't hear you, Tom.
Tom said it
Good to
sounded
me.
good to him.
Okay. All right, in which case I respectfully request a motion.
I'll move to, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll move to approve the funding approach of using IJDC loans for extension of water and sewer service to the proposed mountaintop beverage facility at the Morgantown Industrial Park, with said loans being used to pay costs which are normally the responsibility of the applicant for service, and to recover said costs by implementation of debt service surcharges, which will apply for the life of said loans, in addition to the normal tariff charges for water and sewer service. With these plans being subject to approval by City Council of authorizing ordinances, bond ordinances, and rate ordinances for water and sewer respectively. With his approval being contingent upon an irrevocable backstop being provided by an appropriate party other than MUB to ensure that payment of the proposed debt service will be guaranteed without risk to MUB. And further authorizing the general manager to make the necessary funding applications to IJDC and presentation proposal of draft ordinances to City Council and to execute all documents related thereto.
Okay, do I have a second?
Can I really quick ask one more question before we second it? With this, obviously it's all provisional, but do we have the option that once we approve this, say in 2 months, when we touch back on this, if something significant has changed that the board's uncomfortable with, we're allowed to then say, we don't feel comfortable continuing on. We're allowed to make that decision about that afterwards, right?
I think it's fair to say yes, but I'll see Jeff shaking his head. I'll just ask him to confirm. It's more of a legal question.
Yeah, absolutely. You're just approving the approach. When we start getting into the details, if it doesn't meet the board's expectations, then certainly you don't have to proceed with it.
Great. Okay. Just wanted to confirm that.
Okay, a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Tom second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, that's with the exception of JT, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, motion passes. Are you picking up again, JT?
Yeah. Thanks, Barbara. Okay. All right. We'll move on to old business.
Yes, sir. At the Coben Creek Reservoir, placement of concrete walls for the spillway has been completed. Placement of concrete for the spillway floor. I'm sorry, I meant to say the concrete walls have been completed and concrete for the spillway floor is poised to begin. The contractor is now 51% complete with an April 2022 completion date estimated. And Jim Fetty, I believe, has a video update for you.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Again,
No.
starting from the same point as always, and we'll proceed here. This flight was taken last Friday, so it's fairly recent. If you notice here to the right, you can see the spillway that Tim referenced, the walls being poured. Notice the bottom of the concrete structure known as the terminal structure is being constructed. About 20% of that has been poured with concrete. They started backfilling behind the wall at the spillway, and they've started in this area forming to start pouring the floors here soon. Here we're coming up on the dam footprint itself. Again, this front part is the downstream shell material. And if you notice here, there's a gray line, a divider line. That's really, we'll see that a little close here. I have a picture of this as well, but that's the horizontal drain that is under the downstream shell that is now being turned up. It is going to go vertically up the slope of the core material as it goes up to provide drainage. And they've constructed, if you see this bulldozer, a spreader box that they pull this, they load it with material and they pull, and as they go up, it lifts, they can keep proceeding up with that drain. In comparison to last meeting, the core area is about 3 foot higher than it was at the last meeting that we saw the video. They're still about 60 feet below the settlement elevation, so they've got a ways to go. And right now, the big question is going to be how the weather treats us from here on out. And you see they have dozers spreading material, a disc here to till it up to get aerated a little bit, and then they have a sheep's foot roller that's compacting here in the foreground of the picture. They're continuing to process material. Here we're coming up on the upstream shell material. It's a size of about 3 inch and down for the upstream shell. And here to the left, you see the core material. It's 2 inches and down. And these large piles in the middle, this will be processed to be used for upstream shell. And out of this, they'll get a good bit of riprap as well to armor the upstream side of the dam. And as we get towards the back here, you'll see that they are making some progress on the silt trap, although they've pulled off that temporarily. They've got some water they're going to need to deal with to get that completed. And that's where we're at.
Nice.
Jim, I know I say this every time, but those videos they're really fun to watch and they're really interesting to see the progression. And thank you very much for putting them together. I really look forward to it.
You're quite welcome.
I'm glad to join.
Oh, welcome. Okay, thanks, Jim. Continuing reports on the dam and reservoir project. Recall that the raw water line has been completed. I think I reported that to you last month, but just for the sake of anyone that might be viewing tonight's meeting and not have seen the previous presentations, I wanted to mention that. And then recall that we are also doing a compensatory environmental mitigation project out in Preston counties, doing some stream restoration and the elimination of a privately owned lake at Fike Run in exchange for the approvals from the Corps of Engineers for this project. That work's being done by Reclaim LLC. They're a little over 60% complete now and have completed their stream work and hydro seeding for the year. So they're now trying to button up the project for a fall and winter shutdown. Then they'll come back in the spring in order to address any replanting or reseeding that's necessary. And I believe Jim has an updated video tour of that one as well.
But Okay, I'm starting this video from the upstream end, which is different than what we've done before. We've come the other way. I thought this might be an interesting view. All of the stream work is complete. This drone flight was taken on Friday as well, so it's fairly recent. About 5,000 feet of stream and over 200 structures have been constructed. And again, we're heading downstream now. A lot of the upper part, you see vegetation is starting to take hold. A lot of that's kind of just temporary. As Tim said, we won't really finish the final plantings until the spring. There will be shrubs and trees and different types of grasses depending on where we're at on the length of the stream. Stream now is much wider than it was before, as well as more meandering put into the stream from the natural stream design. As you come down, you see there's not as much vegetation taking off, but they have placed erosion control matting along the edges of the stream, as well as ENS controls to get through the winter without having any discharges from the site.
Will there be fish stocked in this? Will it be available for fishing recreation?
That's not something that we would be doing. I don't know that there would be fish in there or not. I'm not really sure how that works across the state, to be honest with you.
Plus, it remains private property, I believe. Is that true, Jim?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
And you can still make out the edges of the lake, but that over time will go away as we get the plantings in and things start to take off growing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're coming up on here in a second. I'll show you where the dam originally was, how different it looks now.
Are those workers down there walking around?
Yes, they are installing ENS controls. You see their little side by side here. This is where the dam was when we started. So it is now completely gone, and this is obviously very soon after the construction. Once this gets established, it'll probably be a really nice looking stream. And this is Route 26 in Preston County, and this is the existing culvert under that road. And we've we've completed all the work clear down to that point. So now it's just a matter of getting through the winter and finishing the planting.
Do we have a before video from the very beginning before we started? Not at this moment, but
yeah. We have a drone video when we purchased the drone. The construction had already started, so we have photographs of before. But if we want in the next meeting, maybe we could show the video of that we do have of the first drone flight up through there. It looks really different.
yeah, it just might be my restoration nonprofit outreach side coming out, but it'd be really neat. And Chris probably is already on top of this, but on the website somewhere, like a side by side, I think seeing that difference really gets people excited and interested. Or maybe I'm just a nerd and it's me.
No, it is an amazing difference from what's up there now.
Well, I think a lot of us don't have comprehension of the restoration, the amount of work and planning and thought that it takes to make that happen. And I'm overwhelmed by it. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's a nice project.
Don't you post these on YouTube?
I believe we do.
Then you can just put a reference to the YouTube channel.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I often speak kind of disparagingly of the environmental remediation projects in the form of compensatory mitigation. But this is a good example of a really great public good being achieved through that. This was a privately owned lake and a privately owned dam, and the state was holding that private property owner responsible for doing this project. This project cost well over $1 million. And of course, the private property owner, they lacked the resources to even tackle the design, much less the construction of this kind of thing. And so the state made us aware that they were just at an impasse. The state had to require that the project be done, and the private property owner was simply incapable of conducting it. And so through the environmental compensatory mitigation aspect of the Corps of Engineers permitting process, we were brought together, and so we were able to be the solution to that private property owner's dilemma, and the dilemma shared by the DEP as well. So I still don't like having to pay over $1 million for something unrelated to our project, but it's the cover charge to get into the bar, if you want to put it that way. So.
Okay, well, thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
Move on to wastewater.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, we don't have a video for this one. There's not been that much visual change, so we did not pull a video together for this one. But the wastewater treatment plant contractor is making good progress at 94% complete. It's going to take them a while to get that last 6%. They've given us now an official request for an additional 222 days, moving under that proposal the completion date to September 28th of 2021. Their justification for that request was all COVID. We're in the process now of reviewing that, asking them for some additional information to provide evidence for that justification. So we'll see, but my guess is that that's probably a realistic date for when it's really going to get done. And the good news is that we do have the contingency funds in our budget for whatever cost we incur as a function of time. These projects do have kind of an overhead attached to them, and just because the project remains alive, there's that overhead administrative cost of having a live project ongoing. And we do have sufficient funds in the budget in hand to cover those additional costs. The actual work being done includes electrical pumps, piping, and controls for the new digester. The new digester is that large tower that now stands above the site close to the Star City Bridge. We're still working on upgrades to the existing equipment on the prior activated sludge clarifiers. Those are the 3 clarifiers on the Arboretum end of the project. We're upgrading those and putting all new mechanicals into those clarifiers. And we're also doing upgrades to the existing digester pumps and piping for the 2 existing older digesters that are now being completely rebuilt, completely upgraded, and upgrades to the overall digester gas handling and heating system. Those digesters are also a biological process. They do require a constant controlled temperature. They generate a lot of gas themselves, and we recycle that gas to help fuel those systems. So there's a lot of work that's not apparent to the eye in terms of driving by, and most of it being related to the existing and new digester systems. So that completes my report on the wastewater plant.
Okay, thank you. Move on to the general manager's report.
Yes, sir. Well, as has been the case for the last several months, COVID-19 continues to dominate. As much as we hope it would get resolved and not be a factor in what we're doing, it continues to be a dominant factor in what we do. We have all the same precautions in place that we've been exercising for the past several months, including keeping our office closed to the public. That actually seems to be going quite well. I think it's very safe and accurate to say that there's not been any diminishment or drop off in the level of service that we offer our customers. So we're proud of that. As I've mentioned earlier, our water demands and therefore our water and sewer revenues are much closer to normal now than they were in spring and summer. Summer was actually pretty good. We had nearly normal demands during most of the summer from June through September. Since September, our demands have been down in the range of about 1.3%. They've fluctuated between 1 and 4, but for the last month, we've been closer to 1.3. So again, we think that's really good news considering WVU has that mixed curriculum right now. To date, we've received just over $261,000 in reimbursements from the CARES program. And we continue to make monthly applications as each new month's costs are documented, but those have been very modest amounts in the past few months, under $10,000 a month for the last 3 months. And then lastly, with regard to the CARES program, recall I informed you last month that the governor had added a new component to that program where he was offering assistance to delinquent customers with their past due utility bills. I believe that deadline, we have communicated to the eligible customers that we have and informed them of their opportunity and need to respond to us so that we can forward an application to the governor's office in order to assist those customers. The customers cannot, under the governor's program, the customers cannot apply directly. They can only apply through their utility. Then we forward that application to the governor's office, and if it's approved, we're then able to apply whatever the governor provides to us to apply to the customer's accounts. We did that for 1,800 eligible customers, that being we notified the customers of the availability of the program. And the eligible amount of delinquent accounts for those 1,800 customers was about $270,000. The bad news is that the deadline's only a couple of days away and only 249 of 1,800 customers have responded. And the total amount of the accounts for those 249 customers is only $49,000, well below $270,000. So
Why do we think that is?
number one, it's just hard to get people to respond. Number two, some of these customers are gone and they don't care what, the status of the account that they've left in their wake. Number three, I hate to generalize, but it's difficult to mobilize people. And I don't know. I'll stop there.
I got you.
I'm going to reveal a bunch of prejudices that I should not reveal. So
Good.
It's difficult to mobilize people, and one of my favorite sayings that's used far too often. I hate using it, but it applies in this case. Is please help me help you, and that's my response on behalf of MUB to these customers. Is it's frustrating that assistance is there, and all we have to have is a little bit of cooperation from them in order for us and the governor to help them. So if you're listening and you're in that 1,800 customer group, please help us help you, because there's some significant assistance available and it's going untapped.
It might be,
So we only have a couple days, Tim? Is there
A couple of
was-
days for the customers to get back to us, and because we're not yet able to submit our application. So I think November 12th was the deadline for the customers to submit their applications to us. And then we will, as quickly as possible, I mean, like in less than a week, we will turn that around, submit it to the state. And beyond that, I can't predict the response time. But the response time for the monthly submissions that we've made for all of these other costs, the reimbursements to MUB, have speeded up, and they seem to have kind of hit a stride now. And those reimbursements, I think, are coming in easily within 60 days, possibly a little sooner. So I think the response from the governor's office will be relatively prompt.
Have you put it on the paper?
I think you're going to find statewide that there's very little response like ours. If they had announced this in July or August, I think they would have had a lot more, but the passage of time, people have resolved outstanding debts. So many people, if they have relatively small amounts of funds outstanding, they're not going to take the effort.
Unfortunately,
Have you put it in the paper, Tim? I read the paper, but I may have missed it. Did you put it in the newspaper?
we did.
I thought probably you did.
And to Mr. Witt's point about people just not taking advantage of the program, frankly, we've seen within the utility industry a significant number of utilities taking the approach that it just, I guess they read the writing on the wall and they predicted what we are seeing, that the response rate is low. And a lot of utilities looked at it as, you know what, this is not worth our time and effort. We didn't take that approach. We agreed with the expectation that the response rate would probably be low and be frustrating, but we did not accept that as a reason or a justification to not do the work and make the opportunity available. So we're doing the work. It's a shame that more of our customers have not taken advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
Last
Any
item.
finance?
Yes, sir. Last item under the GM report is the BABS refinancing. Those are the Build America bonds. That's now been completed. Totally. It's done. It's in the past. It was very successful. We estimated an annual savings of $300,000, and the actual savings is over $400,000. Will, for the next 20 years, be over $400,000 a year. So ignoring the time value of money, we just saved our customers $8 million. And I always like to repeat this because it's one of the significant things to me. We've also, through this, eliminated the uncertainty of the federal tax rebate subsidy. The financial viability of those bonds to us always depended on the fact that the federal government would refund to us twice a year a tax subsidy, because we were paying a higher interest rate to the bond holders because the bonds were taxable. And the federal government promised us a rebate in order to make those bonds more or less the same cost as if they had been issued tax-free. And the federal government reneged on their promise. They, in around sometime 2007 or so, they actually reduced the amount of the subsidy. And they could do it again if they got into a financial bind. And they could eliminate it if they chose to, if they got in a financial bind. And I think that uncertainty is, now that they've demonstrated that uncertainty is real, I think it was a good move to get out of those bonds as quickly as we could. And the fact that we saved $400,000 a year is icing on the cake. So I think those were two strong reasons, equally strong. But in any case, that's been accomplished. And so thanks to the staff. I've mentioned all of our staff and last month, and also it does take a really good team to do this. And we had a lot of help from our counterparts at the city. Steptoe Johnson was the bond counsel. Cruz Associates were the bond underwriter. They actually buy the bonds and then sell them out on the market. And Jackson Kelly was their counsel. And all of those folks did an extreme amount of work to get this project done. They were a good team, and I'm glad we had them, and I'm glad we pulled off a successful refinance.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Job. Good job.
And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Move on to board member issues or discussions. Anything you want to bring up to the staff?
I do.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
want to express my appreciation to the staff that were involved in the multiphasic blood drive. And while I know a lot of people from Mon General came in, and when I was there, it looked like a lot of the MUB staff also were taking advantage of the multiphasics. And I think it turned out to be quite a success. And I like the scores I got.
Would you be
Well,
would you be equally appreciative if you didn't like the scores?
No comment.
my scores weren't quite as good, Tom. So,
Well, you can make it up. You can
yeah.
fix it.
I'll tell you how to cheat next time.
Okay.
I also wanted to speak on behalf of the staff. I've had a couple of issues I've had to call and get some assistance with. They've done an excellent job responding very quickly, resolving the issue very efficiently and very effectively from wherever they're working. So I do want to say we're going forward with our product and our quality, and they're to be committed for that.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Anything else? Okay. No need for an executive session, I don't believe. So I think we can move to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Okay.
Second.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Mike, nice seeing you. Jim, thank you for